Hello, it's great to have you here. Welcome to this video. My name is Chris Farrell and let's jump in. So this video is all about, it's an overview, if you like, about how to use the dexVaults and also, arguably more importantly, why you should consider using the dexVaults. Let's start at the very beginning. Now, at their heart, at their core, the dexVaults are essentially a powerful auto compounder. But the key difference, and now we're going to start to get a little bit nuanced, is not only are your rewards being compounded in the dexVaults, but they're also being what's known as constantly being rebalanced. Now, remember that word, okay? You might want to make a note of that, rebalancing, because we're going to come on to why this rebalancing feature is A, unique, and B, really important as we continue in this video. But rebalancing is something that's key to the difference of the dexVaults, okay? So make a note of rebalancing. I'm sure you have already. Another unique feature is as follows. And again, we're going to break this down in a lot of detail. So let's get clear on this. Another unique feature of the dexVaults is that 25% of the profits that is generated every time the AutoVault compounds, or harvests as they call it, harvest and compounding is exactly the same, but 25% of the profits that's generated during each of these compounds, 25% of those profits is deposited into what's known as an ETF. Now, I want you to focus because this is really important. And as I said, I've got quite a lot of information to share with you. So let's really break this down. This ETF is part of the dexVaults. You don't have to do anything at all to have your funds 25% of it put into the ETF. It's all done automatically. But let's just back up a little bit because I really want you to understand this, because most people don't. Most people kind of jump into stuff and they don't really know what they're doing. And, you know, you're smart and we want to spend at least a little bit of time understanding. So let's quickly define what an ETF is. Let's start there. And then we're going to go on to explain why this is so important. And then we're going to go on to explain how this fits into the whole vault and the whole dexVaults, okay? So, he's Einstein. Hello, Einie. How are you? So what is an ETF? You may well have heard about an ETF. You might know what an ETF is. But let's just define, so we're all on the same page, what exactly is an ETF. It stands for an exchange-traded funds. And what that actually means is an ETF is a popular investment fund that allows us to have a wide range of assets or shares in one package. I'll give you an example in a second so you're 100% clear on this. But the great thing about ETFs is they're considered in the investment world low risk. And the reason for that is because within an ETF is, if you like, a collection, a basket of various stocks and securities, not just one. So in other words, one of the keys to being a good investor is having a diversified portfolio. And the great thing about an ETF is when you buy into an ETF, you automatically are investing in a diversified portfolio. An example of this is, you might have heard of the Vanguard ETF. It's a very popular ETF fund. Now, this is a fund that when you buy into it, so if you spend, I don't know, $100 to go into that particular fund, that $100 is split between, it's actually split between 500 shares. And the reason, therefore, that many people like ETFs is because, unlike, let's say, buying a particular share, if you buy shares in, I don't know, Coca-Cola or Tesla or Apple, nothing wrong with that, of course, but you're buying those shares hoping that they'll appreciate in value and that you'll get, you know, a payment every quarter on the dividends. Again, nothing wrong with that. But if you invest in an ETF, you're diversifying. You're investing in lots of different assets, all under one umbrella. So the reason for sharing this with you, and now we'll come back to dexVaults and how this all fits in, is in the dexVaults case, dexVaults are unique because they give us an opportunity to have this ETF feature. And the ETF at dexVaults, and this is what I'm building up to, the ETF at dexVaults has exposure to 5 different cryptocurrencies. So you therefore don't have to go and buy these 5 different cryptocurrencies. And 25% of your profits that you make every time there's a compound gets put into this ETF that has exposure to these 5 cryptocurrencies. So let's carry on. So why is this a big deal? Why have I spent a couple of minutes, and I'm slightly conscious I'm keeping one eye on the time here. Why is this a big deal? Well, I'll tell you why it's a big deal. Because, just to be clear, 25% of the profits, let's stay focused here, that are generated every time the Dex AutoVault compounds, 25% of those profits are automatically deposited into your ETF that you can access at any time, and you can cash out at any time. Okay, so for now, let's just keep going. So let's just get clear on what we're saying so far, and then we'll build upon this. So dexVaults are an auto compounder. Every compound, every time it compounds, and I'll go through in a minute how often it compounds, because you might be thinking, well, how often does it compound? We'll come on to that. But every time it does compound, 25% of the profits that have been made in that compound cycle, if you like, are distributed immediately into this ETF. This ETF then goes, hey, I'm going to invest into these 5 cryptocurrencies. And this is really important for many reasons. You're going to love why it's important. We'll come back to this in about 60 seconds time or so. So you might be thinking, well, what happens to the other 75%? And if you're thinking that's great, it shows that you're really thinking about this. Well, the other 75% gets compounded back into the vault itself. And I'm going to throw something else at you here now. The vault itself is split 50-50 between 2 assets that make up that particular vault. We'll look at what those assets are in a moment. Again, I know I did say a fire hydrant of information at you, but let's keep going. I think you're okay, aren't you, so far? Now, that means that the vault is always, again, equally balanced. We've already talked about this term balance, haven't we? And I said remember it, because this is a key, integral, almost secret sauce ingredient as to why the dexVaults are great. Now, without getting too in the weeds here, because you honestly don't really need to know why, let me just tell you, this rebalancing feature allows the vaults, and this is key, to pay on average, get this, between 6 to 20% higher than an identical vault that maybe had exactly the same cryptocurrencies staked or deposited, but that did not have this auto balancing feature. So essentially what I'm saying here is this is a good thing for you to kind of get your head around. We're going to go and look at dexVaults in a couple of moments' time. I just again want to give you the overview of sort of how it works. I don't expect you to understand every single step at this stage, obviously, but you already understand more than 99% of other people that are even unaware of this. So well done for even being here. So I've now got something important to share with you. Can I throw something else at you without it, cramming up your brain with too much information? I think I can. So let's go through that. This is important. Please focus. Please don't be scrolling through Instagram on your phone. Please focus on what I'm about to share with you now. This is really important. Let's now go through how the ETF will make you money. Remember, this is 25% of your profit every time you compound goes into the ETF. But how does it actually make you money? Let's go through that right now. And then we're going to go and look at it and see it in action, okay? So we're almost there. We're going to go to dexVaults in about 2 minutes' time. Just before, how does the ETF make money? So what happens is the ETF, as we now know, uses the 25% profit it gets from every harvest or compound. It's the same thing. And that 25% profit, it then invests into 5 different cryptocurrencies. So far, so good. All this happens automatically. You don't have to do a thing. Maybe just take the dog for a walk. That's all. Now, just like with the vault, remember me talking about this rebalancing thing? We've mentioned this a few times. Just like with the vault, the ETF also rebalances its holdings so that each crypto in the ETF has an equal share. So obviously, 100% would be, the whole. Obviously, if there's 5, that means every cryptocurrency has a 20% holding in the ETF. So your ETF is made up of 5 cryptocurrencies. Each will always be rebalanced to be 20%. Okay? Now, here's what I want to share with you, and you're going to love this. The 5 cryptocurrencies that the ETF constantly buys are the same 5 cryptocurrencies are as follows. And they're the biggies, ladies and gentlemen. They are firstly BUSD. It's a biggie. The ETF also will automatically buy BNB. It's a biggie. WBNB, it says here. That stands for wrapped BNB. It's exactly the same as BNB, pretty much. So we've got BUSD, BNB, Ethereum. So for doing nothing, you're automatically getting Ethereum bought for you every time a compound happens, but it gets better. eShare, we all love eShare as well, but also, and this is a big deal, the 5th and the final cryptocurrency that is automatically bought for you when you invest in the dexVaults is EMP. Why is this a big deal? Let me ask you that question. Why am I really building up the fact that, it's great that we're getting all of these anyway, but why is EMP particularly a big deal? Well, let me ask you a question. What is PEG reliant on at EMP.money? You know where I'm going with this now, don't you? What is PEG reliant on? PEG is reliant solely 100% on the buying and the selling volume of EMP. So if you think about it, if we are now depositing in a vault that automatically is buying EMP every time a compound happens, and at the moment a compound's happening about 1.5 to 2 times a day, that puts a huge amount of buying pressure on EMP, the token, which is going to help with PEG. Good old Peggy. So let's just quickly spend 30 seconds talking about this. The only thing that will raise PEG, and we all want to, of course, get back to PEG, and AJ and the team, they've got all these mechanisms in place, this being one of them, to help get back to PEG. The only thing that will raise PEG is buying of fresh EMP. A lot of people think that PEG is related to the price of Ethereum. It's not. PEG is completely dependent on the buying and the selling volume. To put it simple, if more EMP is bought than sold, PEG rises. If more EMP is sold than bought, PEG falls. It really is as simple as that. So the EFT, this is what I'm building up to here. This is why I spent a few minutes going through this with you. So the EFT at dexVaults puts buying pressure on EMP every single time it compounds. At the moment it's compounding about 1.5 to 2 times a day, and it's only just started. It's really, really, really powerful. So with all that said, shall we go now? Now we've kind of got, again, I don't expect you to understand every single step, but now we've kind of got like at least kind of a vague overview. Let's go to dexVaults and actually kind of see all this in action. Sound good? Shall I have a slurp of my coffee? I'll have a slurp in a moment. Let's go to dexvaults.com right now. So here we are at the web, and here we are, dexvaults.com. Let's jump in. So when you go to dexvaults.com, if you scroll down, there's lots and lots and lots of vaults, all with different assets, different pairs, all different sorts of things. So we are only concerning ourselves, of course, with the EMP ecosystem. So what we want to do is we want to type in EMP in the search here, and various vaults will come up that have got EMP in the title. Some of them might not be anything to do with EMP.money, but this is the one we want to concern ourselves with here. This is the one that we recommend for many reasons, and we'll come on to that as we continue. It's called the EMP Dex Cash Flows. If you're making notes, you might want to make a note of that vault, EMP Dex Cash Flows. So let's have a little look at what we've got here, and we'll go through this together right now. Okay, so firstly, let's go through this step by step and logically. Let's look at the APR firstly. So it's paying 0.19%, which is great. So the APR is here, but let's start on the left-hand side. So this here, all this is one vault, and in the vault are 2 farms. So there's 2 different farms that make up this vault. The first farm is the ETH EMP farm. Now, you might recognize that, of course, from EMP.money. There's an ETH EMP farm at EMP.money. So you could, if you wanted to, put those LP in here. We'll come on to that. What I really want to share with you right now, though, is that there are 2 assets that make up this one vault. And the 2 assets that will always be 50-50 are firstly ETH EMP LP, and secondly something called USDEX USDC. You don't need to worry too much about these at all. Just know that there's 2 separate assets that make up this vault. But when you deposit into this vault, what you deposit is broken into make these 2 assets. You don't have to do anything yourself, but I just want you to know that these are the 2 assets that make up this vault. Okay, so anything that we deposit in here is automatically broken to be 50% ETH EMP and 50% this other asset. Let's continue just to look at a little bit more what we've got here. Take profit. Now, what this is telling us here, it says 25% here. It's telling us, as we've already talked about, that 25% of the profit from every cycle, in other words, every compound, every harvest, those words all mean the sort of the same thing, 25% gets deposited into this EFT. So that's all that is saying. Don't worry about these figures in green for now. I've been testing a few things, so we don't need to worry about that. Invest here and harvest. This is how much I personally have deposited into this vault. I've only put a little bit in. I put $146, as you can see here, just to test things and get my head all around it. And the only other thing to worry about right now is a TVL. So TVL over here, total value locked. In other words, how much has been deposited in this particular vault. Now, this figure is important. Why is this important? Well, it's important anyway to see how much liquidity there is in the vault, but also it's important for another reason. You might be asking yourself, and if you are, I love you for thinking this, well, how often do I get my profits? Here's the thing, again, something else for you to write down if you're making notes. The profits in this vault are linked to the TVL. So what I mean by that is as follows. The profits are linked to the TVL, which is kind of fun. You get profits every time this vault compounds, or harvests as they call it. And how often this vault harvests or compounds depends on the TVL. This is different to, let's say, the detonator. You know the detonator, it has the countdown, of course, and at midnight UTC it kind of zeros, so that's at a specific time. It's different here. There's not a specific time for compounding, unlike the detonator, let's say. Here, as the TVL goes up, so does the amount of times the compounding takes place. Let me say that again. As the TVL increases, so does the amount of times that this vault will compound during the day. So therefore, the more that is deposited, bear with me here, and the more that the TVL increases, the more often the vault will compound, which means the more often the profits will be sent to the ETF, which means that there's more buying pressure on EMP, which means that that's going to help with PEG. Shall I say that again? The more that's deposited into this vault, the more often it will compound, which means more often profits are sent to the ETF, which means there's more buying pressure on EMP, as well as the other four assets that make up the ETF. Also, more often the vault will rebalance. So let's look at this vault in a bit more detail. And basically just the pertinent information that you need to know. Now, it's not obvious, I know, looking at it, but if you click on this, it will expand. So let's do that. Clicking on the vault, it will expand. And let's look at this in a little bit more detail. There's various tabs at the bottom here that I want to quickly share with you. Let's click on the deposit tab. When we click on the deposit tab, we can deposit into the vault. In the deposit token area, in the drop down, there's various assets that we can deposit. As soon as you deposit, you will start earning, and the next compound, 25%, as you now know, gets sent to the ETF. Again, I know I'm going through this bit relatively quickly. This is just really an overview. If you want to withdraw at any time, exactly the same in reverse, you can withdraw here. So that's the deposit tab. Let's click on the performance tab, and here I want to go through what we're seeing in the performance tab. Now we get an option to see our personal stake. Oh, hang on, just went back a page there. So here we go. Let's go back to performance. We get an option to look at what we've deposited by clicking on personal, or total is a total amount that is in the vault itself. So this figure here, 86,000, will match here. And this is a relatively new vault, so this will increase over time. This has already increased about 7,000 in the last 12 hours or so. So the performance tab shows us how the particular vault is doing, and here are the two assets that are staked. Remember I said they were 50-50, so the dollar value will be similar. It's a little bit fluctuating at the moment, but this automatically rebalances. But the two assets that make up this farm will always be 50-50. And here in the pending, every compound, what this is telling us is it's saying the next time that the compound happens, the figure here in dollars will be split 75% back into the vault and 25% into the ETF. Now, as a slight aside, the reason that we're seeing zero here for the eShare profits is because at the time of making this video, as you might well know, eShare is going through a migration. So the new eShare token needs to be added. You don't need to worry about that at all. All the time there will be a dollar figure here and a dollar figure there. If we add those together, 75% of that will get put back into the vault, 25% will put into the ETF. So one more quick thing to go through, then I'm going to go through how you can get started, and then some FAQs, then you deserve a break. Let's click on the profit tab here. This is the big one, ladies and gentlemen. This is where we can see our ETF. Here, you can see these 5 little icons here. If I click on View Fund, in fact, I'm going to do this and open it in a new tab. Let me show you the 5 assets that we talked about. Here they are: EMP, eShare, Ethereum, BNB, BUSD. You can cash out at any time. Cashing out, you can simply cash out by clicking Burn, and you can cash out as a single asset. That means you can essentially sell all these 5 cryptos just as once. You might want them all as eShare or BNB, or if you click on multi-asset, you can have them all as 5 different assets. Now, this is a little bit more of an advanced strategy. I'm not going to go through this now, but if you did take your profits as multi-assets, which is not a bad thing to do, you're going to get a bit of EMP, eShare, ETH, BNB, and BUSD. And what you could do there, for example, is you could take the EMP and the Ethereum, and you could pair those together, and you could put that back in the farm at emp.money to earn more eShare. You could sell your eShare for profit. You could keep your BUSD just again for profit, and you could use your BNB for the gas fees. So there's lots of things to do, and the more we dig down, and I'm happy to get more advanced with you, as you will discover, there's lots of great fun things that you can do. Let's go back to these settings, and here are the harvest settings. This means how often it compounds. It's saying here it last compounded about a day ago. It was actually less than that. It was about 16 hours ago, and the next harvest is in about 37 minutes. So at the moment it's compounding about 1.5 times a day. But as I say, the more that the TVL increases, the more often it will compound. There's a few things left for this video. I want to go through some frequently asked questions, but right now let's go through, I'm calling it your 3-step plan. If you want to get involved now and you're thinking, okay, I wouldn't mind just kind of, Chris, putting something in here just to get started. I sort of see the value. How do I do it? Well, let's go through that right now. So here's your simple 3-step plan to getting started, and it really is simple, you'd be pleased to know. Firstly, step 1 is just go to dexVaults and choose the EMP Dex Cashflow Vault as you saw me do. Simple as that. Step 2, you may need to approve the farm. The first time you go there, there's probably going to be an approve button. It'd be grayed out otherwise. So you click the approve button. I'd obviously have been there before, so you didn't see the approve button. So go there, approve the farm, then simply deposit. You can choose what asset you want to deposit, BNB, BUSD, USDC, eShare. More deposits are continually being added. And then step 3 is set and forget. That's it. So first question, we get this a lot, is why would I use the dexVaults as opposed to other auto compounders? Great question. Really, there's 3 things that spring to mind straight away. Firstly, and I haven't even mentioned this until now, the fees. The fees are a lot lower at dexVaults than any other competitor. Beefy Finance, for example, nothing against Beefy Finance, but they charge 9%. dexVaults charge 4.5%, so literally half. And not only that, but half of that gets sent back to the EMP Treasury. So it's actually funding the EMP Treasury as well. Second reason why you use dexVaults as opposed to another auto compounder is this balancing mechanism that I've mentioned a few times. This has been created specifically, and I haven't even really mentioned this either, to increase the APRs of the vault. It does. In fact, I've seen the APRs of this particular vault go up by about 0.2% just in the last 24 hours. Now, this rebalancing feature alone allows the vaults to pay, I mentioned this briefly earlier, between about 6 to 20% higher than an identical vault with exactly the same split of assets, but that does not have this rebalancing feature. So you're getting between 6 to 20% more just because you're in a vault that has this rebalancing feature. So that's another reason why you'd use the dexVaults, or at least be open to using them. And the third reason is this automatic take profits feature, if you like, that we've talked about many times now. It's just amazing because you don't have to do anything, but 25% of your profits will automatically get deposited into an ETF, which then in turn, as you now know, buys the big 5 cryptos. You know, they're kind of they're if you like the blue chips, aren't they? You know, Ethereum, BUSD, BNB, eShare, and EMP as well. And you can access the ETF at any time. You're not locked into anything. You can access it any time and sell and cash out. So they would be 3 reasons I would share with you why you'd consider using the dexVaults. How does the dexVaults help peg recovery? Great question. So we did talk about this, but let's just recap. How does the dexVaults help peg recovery? Well, let's just focus and remind ourselves, because every compound, 25% is sent to the ETF, isn't it? And a portion of that is used to buy these 5 cryptocurrencies. One of them is EMP. So we're buying fresh EMP every time the vault auto compounds.